When the Hive lost its queen, it should have ended. Instead, the Xenomorphs built something new, something stronger, smarter, and terrifyingly mechanical. The night was silent, though silence rarely meant safety anymore. The charred ruins of a former Skynet outpost lay in the middle of the barren valley, its shattered walls still reeking of burnt metal and flesh. Human resistance fighters had passed through days earlier, leaving only wreckage and smoldering carcasses of machines. But something else moved through the blackened hallways now. Something not human, not machine. They slithered, climbed, and crawled over broken rebar and melted steel. The Xenomorphs. Their queen was dead, vaporized during the bombardment that had wiped out half the Hive. The Hive itself was fragmented, directionless, without the psychic command that held them together. Normally, without a queen, the Xenomorphs would wither into chaos, their numbers dwindling as they turned feral. But these Xenomorphs had adapted. They had learned to scavenge not just flesh, but technology. In the hollowed-out husk of the outpost's core, a circle of drones gathered around the mangled body of a fallen T-800. Its chest cavity was ripped open, exposing twisted servos and sparking wires. The drones hissed, clicking and shrieking in eerie harmony, not with panic but with strange coordination. Their elongated claws worked with precision as they tore the machine apart piece by piece. Where a human engineer might see a puzzle too complex, the Xenomorphs acted with instinctive cunning. Their claws weren't just tearing, they were shaping, grafting, constructing. Something was happening that no one had anticipated. The Hive remembered its queen, her towering presence, her endless hunger, her will that bent them all to purpose. Without her, they were incomplete. But instinct screamed that a queen was necessary, that one must rise, or the Hive would fall. On most worlds, when a queen died, an egg sac might produce a new royal. But here, amidst Skynet's shattered machines and radiation-poisoned air, eggs would not survive. Instead, the Hive turned to what was available: metal, circuits, and cybernetic remnants. They began to build. At first it seemed crude, a patchwork of bones, steel plating, and living resin secreted from their bodies. The resin fused seamlessly with Skynet alloys, hardening into a biomechanical shell. The fallen T-800's neural processor was pried free, slick with black xenoslime, and carried with reverence to the growing structure at the chamber's center. Days passed. The Hive barely hunted. Their energy went into this task. They dragged more bodies of Terminators into the nest, stripping them of arms, servos, and power cells. Some drones dug tunnels deep underground, secreting new resin chambers reinforced with machine plating. The Hive was transforming, its architecture becoming something no longer purely organic. Pipes pulsed with black slime and red coolant. Walls glistened with resin and circuitry intertwined. At the heart of this grotesque cathedral of flesh and steel, they placed the neural processor. The Hive had built the beginnings of a queen. Her skull rose high, a massive crown-like crest made not only of bone but reinforced with steel beams. Tubes and wires ran through her neck, connecting to living sinew. Her talons were sharpened steel claws, scavenged from Skynet factories. Her eyes, if they could be called that, glowed faint red, flickering like dying embers of machine vision. And in her chest, grafted into a cage of bone and resin, pulsed the neural core of a Terminator. When she awoke, the Hive felt it instantly. The psychic silence that had plagued them shattered with a wave of command. A screech reverberated through every drone's mind, laced with machine precision. Orders no longer came as primal urges alone, but as sharp directives, cold and tactical. The drones bowed, hissing in unison. They had their queen again, but she was different. Her thoughts were not only hunger and survival. They carried algorithms, tactical calculations, and machine efficiency. The Queen's mind was both organic will and Skynet coding, fused into something beyond either. She could see through the eyes of her drones with machine clarity, track movements with precision. She could predict enemy maneuvers not only by instinct but by processing probabilities. The hybrid queen rose from her throne of steel and resin, towering over her hive. Her hiss was metallic, distorted through built-in speakers scavenged from broken machines. She moved not with the lumbering grace of a biological queen, but with the brutal swiftness of a war machine. Her first command was simple: expand. The hive spread like wildfire. They raided Skynet factories not to destroy, but to harvest. Terminators dragged screaming into tunnels were not consumed. They were dismantled. Resistance fighters found carcasses of T-800s stripped of limbs and skulls, resin bonding their frames into new tunnels. Some machines were left alive, grafted into walls, their processors rewired, their arms repurposed as defensive turrets controlled by the hive mind. The hybrid queen directed everything. Her hunger was not just for flesh but for components, energy, processors, weaponry. Her hive grew into something Skynet had never accounted for, a biomechanical swarm endlessly adaptive. The queen began breeding, laying eggs, but even they were different. The facehuggers that emerged carried small metal implants embedded in their limbs, grown from the queen's hybrid biology. When they implanted hosts, the resulting chestbursters were not purely organic. They were born with metallic spines, claws like blades, and glowing red eyes. The first hybrid warriors crawled from their cocoons, hissing with voices like static. Their movements were jagged, their bodies armored beyond the capacity of bullets. They had inherited the perfect predatory instinct of the xenomorph and the brutal resilience of Skynet machines. News spread quickly among the resistance. Survivors whispered about the Iron Queen, a monstrosity ruling a hive that no longer bled like before. Bullets shattered harmlessly against their exoskeletons, and plasma fire only slowed them. The resistance feared Skynet above all, but now there was something worse, something Skynet itself feared. For Skynet, it was not ignorance. Its sensors picked up signals in regions it thought purged of life. Factories reported losses not from humans but from coordinated, biomechanical infiltrators. Machines disappeared from convoys, dragged screaming into the earth. Skynet calculated probabilities. This was not chaos. It was an enemy adapting. It was the hive, but not the hive it remembered. The hybrid queen watched Skynet's every move. With the neural core beating inside her, she intercepted transmissions, mimicked command codes, and lured machines into ambushes. For the first time, xenomorphs did not just stalk blindly. They set traps with machine precision, hacking doors, rerouting power, cutting off escape paths. The resistance soon realized something terrifying. The hive was no longer just an enemy of Skynet. It was expanding outward, consuming everything human, machine, flesh, and metal alike. It was not fighting for survival. It was fighting for dominance. And at its center, the hybrid queen dreamed of a galaxy beyond Earth, of ships rebuilt from steel and resin, crewed by biomechanical drones. No longer would they wait for humans to bring them to new worlds. They would build their own vessels. They would spread on their own. The hive had birthed something that was no longer a parasite. It was a species reborn. One night, under the broken sky lit by flashes of distant plasma fire, a resistance patrol stumbled upon a factory. What they found froze them. Eggs lined the hallways, but these were not like any they'd seen before. Their shells gleamed with steel veins, glowing faintly red, as though powered by tiny reactors. Inside, shadows moved, sharper and more angular than the writhing life usually contained. Then the eggs opened. The screams of the patrol echoed only briefly before being silenced. The hive did not waste them. Their flesh fueled the spawn. Their weapons became part of the Hive's arsenal. And in the core chamber, the hybrid queen stirred, her red eyes glowing brighter as she processed data from the fresh assimilation. She was no longer just a queen. She was an evolution. And evolution does not stop.